Trapped in an abusive marriage, I fought to save my kids from their mother's wrath. Finally, I found the strength to escape and find freedom. I never thought I'd be the kind of man who looks back on his life with regret, as if each memory were a sharp piece of glass cutting into my palms. But here I am, standing in front of the small house I once called home, the place where I lost years of peace and watched my children shrink like plants deprived of light. It started like most things do, with a moment that seemed perfect. Melissa had a smile that lit up a room, eyes the color of stormy skies, and a laugh that was as infectious as it was rare. When we first met, I was a younger man with hope stitched into my every move. I believed I could build a life where my family thrived. But over time, Melissa's smile turned into a baring of teeth, and her laughter became a weapon wielded with precision. I remember the day I first realized something was terribly wrong. Lily, our daughter, only 6 at the time, had been playing with her favorite stuffed rabbit, Mr. Hops. I was in the kitchen making sandwiches when I heard the muffled sobs. Rushing into the living room, I saw Melissa standing over Lily, her fingers wrapped tightly around Mr. Hops' ears, pulling him away from our little girl. Lily's eyes, usually bright as morning dew, were wide with terror. "You've done nothing today but make this house a mess," Melissa spat at Lily, the venom in her voice making my stomach turn. I stepped in, trying to stay calm as I reached for the toy. "Melissa, she's just a kid, let her play. I'll clean up." I kept my voice steady, even though my pulse was drumming a war song. She turned those cold eyes on me. "Always the hero, aren't you, James? You're so eager to swoop in and rescue everyone. Pathetic." She let go of Mr. Hops, and Lily crumpled to the floor, hugging the rabbit as though it could shield her from the storm that was our home. That was just one moment of many. Over time, Melissa's anger seeped into every corner of our lives. The mornings started with sharp words. Sam, my 8-year-old son, being criticized for spilling milk, or me being berated for leaving a towel on the floor. By night, the house was quiet, not peaceful, but the silence that comes when people are too afraid to speak. One night, I was woken by Lily's voice. It was small, shaky, a whisper just on the edge of breaking. "Daddy." She stood in the doorway, her tiny frame outlined by the dim glow of the hall light. Her eyes were red, and I could see the glisten of tears on her cheeks. I sat up, my heart thudding as if it had already run miles. "What is it, sweetheart?" "She's mad again," Lily said. Hugging her rabbit tightly, I reached out, scooping her into my arms. The moment she touched my chest, I felt how she trembled, like a leaf in a cold wind. Footsteps sounded down the hallway, loud and deliberate. Melissa appeared, her silhouette dark, her presence heavy and suffocating. She said nothing, but her eyes spoke 1,000 silent threats. I hugged Lily tighter, feeling the shame coil in my gut. How had I let it come to this? I wish I could say I left right then, that I gathered my kids and ran into the night. But fear is a cage that's hard to unlock when you've forgotten how to use the key. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and with every argument, every slammed door, I watched Sam grow quieter, his eyes downcast, always watching and waiting. Lily stopped singing when she played, her voice swallowed by the walls that echoed Melissa's shouting. One afternoon, I came home to find Sam sitting in the backyard with a scrape on his cheek. When I asked him what happened, he glanced at the window where Melissa stood, watching, and whispered, "It's nothing, Dad," but his eyes said more than his mouth ever would. He was afraid of her. They both were. That night, I made my decision. I sat up long after the children were asleep, staring at the flickering streetlight outside, listening to Melissa's steady breathing next to me, and thinking of the life we could have had to have. One where my children wouldn't flinch at every loud noise or look at me with the pleading eyes of kids who needed saving. The next morning, I packed their bags while Melissa was out. I told Sam and Lily we were going on an adventure, and for the first time in months, I saw a glimmer of excitement replace the whirring in their faces. We drove to my sister's house 2 towns over, and the moment we walked in, a weight lifted that I hadn't realized had been crushing me. Melissa called, screaming through the phone, but this time I didn't flinch. I held the kids close, whispering that we were safe, that we were done living beneath a storm that never passed. It wasn't easy. The months that followed were filled with custody battles, whispered conversations, and nights when the kids would wake up crying, haunted by shadows from their memories. But there were also mornings where Sam laughed so hard milk came out of his nose, and afternoons when Lily sang again, the sound like sunlight after rain. Years later, I still bear the guilt of waiting so long to leave, but every time I see Lily smile or hear Sam's laughter, I remind myself of the promise I made to them, that I'd never let the storm find us again, and so far, I've kept it. I thought I'd escaped my controlling ex-wife, but her obsessive grip follows me. Now, every shadow, every message, feels like she's always watching. They say hindsight is 20/20, but it's hard to believe I didn't see the signs. Looking back, I wonder how I missed them, but when you're in the middle of it, it all feels so normal. And that's how she got me slowly, carefully, one piece of my life at a time. Her name was Erin, and I genuinely believed she was my soulmate. But that was before everything changed, before she slowly dismantled my world, and made sure I knew she was the only thing left holding me together. When we first met, Erin was captivating. She had this kind of intense energy that drew me in. She made everything feel like it had purpose, like we were meant to be together. I thought her possessiveness was love, that it was her way of showing she cared. She would say things like, "I just don't want to share you with anyone else." It was intense, sure, but I thought that's what love was supposed to feel like. After we moved in together, things started changing bit by bit. At first, she was just helping me out with little things, handling my schedule, organizing my finances. But slowly, she started taking over everything. If I had plans with friends, she'd say something like, "Oh, so I'm not enough for you." If I wanted to see my family, she'd complain about how they didn't appreciate her or how they looked down on her. I began cancelling plans, isolating myself without even realizing it. The first time she hit me was on a night when I came home late. I'd been out with my friend Joe, who I hadn't seen in months, and I lost track of time. When I walked through the door, Erin was sitting at the kitchen table, waiting. I barely got a word in before she slapped me across the face, yelling about how I betrayed her and disrespected her. She cried afterward, apologizing, saying she was just scared of losing me. I forgave her because I wanted to believe she was just scared. She made me feel like I was the one who'd messed up, like it was my fault for not understanding her. But that slap turned into a pattern. Whenever I did something she didn't like, she'd lose her temper, accusing me of not loving her enough or being selfish. The emotional manipulation was worse than any physical hit. She'd tell me things like, "You're lucky someone loves you as much as I do, or no one else would put up with your flaws." She drilled those words into my mind until I started believing them. One night, she pulled out her phone and showed me a long list of messages she'd sent to my friends, texts I'd never seen. She told them I was too busy to hang out, that I needed space. She'd been pretending to be me, cutting me off from everyone in my life without my knowledge. I tried to confront her, but she just smirked and said, "They don't care about you like I do. I'm the only one who knows you." I tried to leave once. I packed a bag, told her I was done, that I couldn't live this way anymore. She broke down, crying, begging me to stay, saying she'd change, that she just couldn't bear to be without me. I was ready to walk out the door, but then she threw in something I never expected. She said, "If you leave, I'll make sure everyone knows who you really are. I'll tell your family, your job, your friends. You think anyone would believe you? They'll only see what I want them to see." Her words froze me in my tracks. She'd been building this cage for so long, brick by brick, and suddenly, I was trapped inside it. I put my bag down, defeated, and she smiled, knowing she had won. From that moment, my life felt like a script she was writing. She monitored every call, every text, every email. She put tracking apps on my phone for safety, she said, but I knew the truth. She even had my bank account information and tracked my spending. I was completely under her control. One night, she told me she'd booked us a special vacation, something to help us reconnect. We drove to a cabin in the middle of nowhere. I didn't even know where we were going until we got there. No phone signal, no way to leave. She planned everything perfectly. She wanted us to spend the weekend focused on each other, but the whole trip felt like I was under surveillance. She watched me constantly, asking me strange questions about my past relationships, wanting to know every detail of who I'd been with and what we'd done. Her questions became accusations, then demands, until I felt like I was confessing crimes I hadn't even committed. By the end of the weekend, I was emotionally drained. I told her everything, shared every memory she demanded, hoping it would make her happy, but it only seemed to feed her need for control. On the drive back, she held my hand and said, "Now I know everything, you're mine, completely." After we got back, her behavior grew darker. She'd leave subtle reminders that she could reach me anywhere. I'd find notes in my work bag saying things like, "Remember, you're mine." Once, I found a strange message on my computer, written in a document I didn't create, reading, "There's nowhere to hide." Finally, I reached my breaking point. I realized that no matter what threats she threw at me, I had to get out. I couldn't keep living as a prisoner in my own life. I confided in my best friend, Mark, who hadn't heard from me in nearly a year. He listened, horrified, and agreed to help me plan my escape. One night, while Aaron was asleep, I gathered my essentials and with Mark's help, slipped out of the house. I went to a hotel under a different name and filed a restraining order the next morning. I changed my phone number, email, everything. For a while, I was looking over my shoulder every day. She tried to contact me through fake numbers, even created fake social media profiles to reach me, but I blocked them all. I thought I'd escaped. I thought I was finally free. Then, 2 weeks later, I found a letter in my mailbox with no return address. Inside was a photo of us from our early days, back when I thought I knew her. Underneath, she'd written in red ink, "I'll always know where you are." It's been over a year since I left, but I still feel her presence everywhere. I don't know if she's actually out there or if she's finally moved on, but even in my quietest moments, I feel like she's watching, waiting for the perfect moment to remind me that I'll never really be free. And sometimes, in the dead of night, I find myself wondering maybe she's right. If you liked the video, please subscribe and hit the notification bell and stay tuned for more videos.